Good morning, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here this morning with us. We are so excited to welcome co-chair of the Calgary chapter of Dying with Dignity Canada, Miss Kerrie Hale. So Kerrie's going to be here with us today. She's not only a volunteer, she's many things beyond that, and she's been in this role for 6 years. And I think she's just going to be an excellent presentation this morning. I know that this can hang a little heavy on our heart, but we just have to remember that we're all in this, in the same boat, and Kerrie is a professional with medical assistance in death and dying. She's going to let us know, what the process looks like, what questions we might ask. So I'm not going to keep going ahead. I'm going to let Kerrie take it away. So join me in a big virtual clap and welcome Kerrie. Hi, Kerrie.
Hi, thank you, Sarah. And thank you all for joining us this morning. I'll just correct you on one point. I am not a professional with medical assistance in dying. I will be reading a disclaimer slide. I'm not even a healthcare worker. I was an economist back in the day. I do, however, having said that, know quite a lot about MAiD. So, um,
And that's where
um,
the professional comes in. So, I
yeah.
mean, I don't think I am a very big believer in that experience versus theory. I'm more of on the experience side. So that's where I
Okay.
say professional. So, in that
Okay.
aspect, I am a professional dancer. So, and I've never danced
Yeah,
a
me
day in my
too.
life.
Okay. Well, moving right along, we are here to talk about death. That is a topic that a lot of people are pretty skittish with. So, congratulations to all of you for being here this morning. The presentation itself will take about 40 minutes, depending on how quickly I speak. And we'll tell you everything you ever wanted to know about end-of-life options, with a focus on MAiD. Because MAiD is fairly new, because a lot of people still don't know about it, and because there is a ton of misinformation out there about it. So next slide, please, Sarah.
All right. So
One day I will learn how to do this.
don't you worry. You just let me know when you want me to switch, and
Okay.
I am happy to do that.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just going to start. There we go.
And the
And
next slide, please. Although I will say, talking about death won't kill you. Um, The presentation will take about 40 minutes on end of life options. Why do we want to know about end of life options? Because knowledge is power. I suspect most of us here today are baby boomers, and boomers have always wanted to be in control of absolutely everything. In that respect, end of life is no different than any other phase of life. If you know what your rights and options are, and if you plan ahead, you have a much greater chance of being able to control what happens, and to have the kind of death you want. This is particularly important if at some point you lose the ability to speak for yourself, and that can happen at any time. Um, you should all have an advanced care plan. The details what your wishes are, should you find yourself in a situation where you can't speak for yourself. I bet most of you don't. This is the kind of thing that we all think, yeah, I really have to do that. But we don't. Um, However, it is important. And having said that, this is not the topic of today's presentation. We do a whole separate presentation on advanced care planning and would be happy to do one for you guys at another point. Um, Next slide, please, Sarah. So a lot of people think that DW Dying with Dignity Canada and medical assistance in dying are sort of one and the same. And there's a reason for that. DWDC has been around for 40 years. And in its early days, it was focused primarily on getting MAiD legalized. It is still the case that we'd like to see access to MAiD broadened, but we also want to make sure that there are other quality end-of-life options available to people, that Canadians know about them, that they talk about them, and that they document them in that advanced care plan that you're all going to go prepare after this. Um, we also believe there should be dignity in living as well as in dying, and to that end, we support more supports for people with mental illness, people with disabilities. We need more of those supports, clearly. We're strong advocates for palliative care, especially for palliative care at home. Currently, very few people who want palliative care at home can get it. And we educate people. A lot of people don't know MAiD is legal. Even if they do know, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And both these factors limit access to MAiD. I'd like to stress that we do not promote MAiD. We realize that there are many people out there who don't agree with it, and we respect that opinion. What we do advocate for is the ability of people to choose for themselves and to be able to access MAiD if they meet the requirements. So this is the part, next slide, please, Sarah. This is the part where I read the, sorry, in this litigious environment, I have to read this. So the information provided is accurate as of present date, cannot be considered healthcare or legal advice. Any questions regarding medical or legal matters should be directed to the appropriate licensed professional. So now that I have covered my rear end, could you move to the next slide, please? Yeah, so as Sarah said, dying is not a light-hearted topic. So I like to inject some levity when I can. The wisdom of Snoopy. Next slide, please, Sarah. So what are some end-of-life options? Death has changed a lot over the last little while. Used to be that you died at home, and most people still want to die at home. But chances are you won't. Chances are you'll die in a hospital. Chances are it won't happen immediately. So you or your agent, that's the agent that you've appointed in this advanced care plan that you've set up, could have some options to choose from. The first is all possible interventions. Some people want their lives to be saved no matter what. So would approve of options like cardiopulmonary resuscitation, being put on a ventilator, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's worth being aware that these often don't turn out the way they do on TV. There was a book written by a guy I recommend, Dr. Blair Bigham. It's called Death Interrupted: How Modern Medicine is Complicating the Way They Die. And in that book, he says that 90% of patients on TV are saved by heroic measures. You know, you wait with bated breath and yay, it works. And he gets up and they gets off the table and goes plays tennis. In real life, apparently, it's only 10% of people who are saved. And these are invasive measures. Nobody's going to be playing tennis anytime soon. Rather than extending life, they have the effect of extending dying. The second one, withdrawing or refusing treatment is perfectly legal, even if it would hasten your death. Um, you can refuse treatment, you can ask that it be removed. They're both completely legal. The third one there, I don't know how many people might have heard of this, voluntary stopping eating and drinking, and we call it VSED for short. It is what it seems to be, and it leads to death usually between 15 and 30 days, with the patient dropping into a coma. VSED is best undertaken with, it sounds straightforward, but it's best undertaken with medical supervision because it's not an easy process. Most people know what palliative care is. It can be provided in hospice, can be provided at home, and it is primarily comfort care that is usually able to control pain. We need, as I said earlier, we need access to more of this, especially at home. Palliative sedation is probably less well known than palliative care, and it is a measure that's used when to treat intractable pain. It can have the effect of causing the patient to spend most of the time asleep, can lead to eventually. Um, anyway, it's an extreme form of palliative care. You can't demand it. Um, but you can ask for it, or your agent can ask for it. Doctors usually want to do no harm, and untreated pain is certainly harmful. Okay, I must have sent an earlier version of my slides because the next bullet was supposed to be suicide. Um, Suicide is legal in Canada. It didn't used to be, but it is now. Aiding and abetting it is not. And it's something patients consider when they've had a condition or illness for a long time. Medical assistance in dying became legal in Canada in 2016 for people with a grievous and irremediable condition and who meet all the other requirements. We don't call it suicide or attempted suicide, assisted suicide, because the circumstances around it are quite different from the circumstances around MAiD. Suicide is usually carried out alone, usually in secret, usually involves a violent act, and the family is usually left shocked and distressed. With MAiD, the family is generally involved with the whole process. Um, Sorry, I've lost my place. And it is a gentle death. Um, Most patients who have been approved for MAiD report a new lease on life after they've been approved, because they know that when they no longer want to live with their illness, they can have a peaceful death surrounded by loved ones. Many people who are approved for MAiD never use it. Um, Even after being approved for MAiD, you can change your mind at any point during the process, even on the day when it is to be provided. And it doesn't mean you can't have palliative care. About 75% of people who had MAiD in 2023 also had palliative care. So those are some of the options that will be, and most of them will be up for discussion. You'll get information about most of those. But in Alberta, information about MAiD is generally provided only to patients who ask about it. It's difficult to ask about an option that you don't know about. So we feel that patients with life-limiting illnesses should be given information on all end-of-life, legal end-of-life options, including MAiD. Next slide, please. I do not want to give you a history lesson. This is a real Reader's Digest version. And the reason I like to do this is because it points up two things that I think are really important to know about MAiD. One is that this just hasn't just popped out of the woodwork in the last decade, since legalization or slightly before. It's been around for a long time. The other thing is that the evolution of MAiD in Canada has been driven by people with disabilities. And you'll see that as I go through this. Probably most of you recognize Sue Rodriguez, the woman in the top photograph. She is was a BC woman with ALS. She had 2 to 5 years to live at the point where she asked the Supreme Court for permission to end her life with medical help. The court voted 5-4 against her. 20 years later, the Supreme Court was considering two very similar cases. This time, the plaintiffs were again from BC, two women, Gloria Taylor and Kay Carter. Um, this time, all 9 judges agreed to decriminalize medically assisted death for competent adults with a grievous and irremediable condition and who clearly consented to the termination of life. And I read that. The reason I read it is because it's important to know what that decision was, and how it was changed through the legislation. Uh, the decision is known as the Carter decision. So Bill C-14 was passed in June of 2016, legalizing assisted death, but it was more restrictive than the Carter decision. It required people to have deaths that were reasonably foreseeable,
Hmm.
although the term wasn't legally defined. Didn't take long for that restriction to be challenged. And in the bottom photograph, you see the pictures of two people, Nicole Gladu and Jean Trouchon. They both had incurable degenerative illnesses, were suffering intolerably, but weren't eligible for MAiD because their deaths were not reasonably foreseeable. They claimed that this was unconstitutional, and the judge agreed with them. So, in March of 2021, the bill was passed to remove the necessity that death be reasonably foreseeable. As we'll see later, though, there are some strings attached. So you see, it's been around, MAiD's been around for discussion for many, 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 many years. And all five of these people who drove the evolution of it were all people with disabilities. Next slide. Okay, who supports MAiD? A ton of people support MAiD. 85% of Canadians, and that includes 81% of Albertans, cuts across all kinds of group lines. People with disabilities, apparently 86% of them support MAiD. Different religions. I think it's odd that 77% of Protestants and 85% of Catholics seem to, but that's what the data says. Politically, again, all political stripes support, although slightly less support among conservatives.
Wow.
Yeah, interesting, huh?
Hmm.
Next slide. So, okay, moving again, I don't want to throw a bunch of data at you, but the data does tell a story. And the first thing it says is that in 2023, just under 5% of all deaths were MAiD deaths. Um, the percentage, so, 15,000 plus deaths looks like a lot, but percentage wise, there's a lot of people dying in this country. So percentage wise, it's not that huge. Um, the percentages vary across the country. They are highest in BC and Quebec, where they are about 6 or 7% of total deaths. In Alberta, they're just over 3%. And there's a few reasons for that. The average age of people receiving MAiD is over 77 years, roughly equally distributed between men and women. As I'm sure all of you could have guessed, cancer is the main underlying medical condition in 2/3 of cases. Um, the main reason people seek MAiD might surprise you. A lot of people think it's pain, but in fact, the most important reason that people bring up is the loss of ability to engage in meaningful activities. That is followed by loss of dignity, and then inadequate control of pain was mentioned by 54% of people, so far below the lack of ability to engage in meaningful activities. Next slide, please.
Yeah, quality of life. It's really important.
Mhm,
That's people
mhm.
kind of you always it's like an afterthought, but it's so important quality of life.
And what it points up is that we need to provide, to the extent that we can, uh,
Absolutely.
focus on providing better quality of life.
Yep.
So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty now. These are the requirements in order to be eligible for MAiD. You have to be over the age of 18 and you have to be mentally competent. You have to be eligible for provincial health care. MAiD is not available in Canada to non-residents. You have to have made the request voluntarily. There can't have been any coercion. Um, you must have a serious and incurable illness, disease, or disability. You must be in an advanced state of irreversible decline in capability and have enduring physical or psychological suffering that you find intolerable and that cannot be alleviated under treatment options that you consider acceptable. So, if you don't tick all of those boxes, you are not eligible for MAiD.
Oh, so there's not one that might be a little more important than the other.
Well, certainly the first one is that you have to have a serious and incurable illness disease. You can't request MAiD on the basis that you might have a stroke in the future.
Mm,
And so that is important. And we'll see that this is really tricky when it comes to a condition like dementia.
yes.
Last three requirements are tricky. That's a whole
Y-
nother subject.
That's exactly what I thought when you said like you have to be able to be your own decision maker. Like I wonder, somebody with like early stage dementia or something,
Still eligible because has not lost capacity. It's specific.
okay.
Um, we'll get to that later, but yes, good point.
Thanks, Kerrie. Okay, next slide.
Next slide, please. Um, you may have seen in the press lately reports that people have been getting made for due to lack of appropriate housing, lack of mental illness supports, or poverty. These reports are not accurate. Um, Lack of appropriate housing, social supports are not reasons to be considered eligible for MAiD. They may well be part of your story, but they don't make you eligible for MAiD. You have to tick all of the boxes in that previous slide in order to qualify for the MAiD. If someone provides MAiD to someone who doesn't meet all those requirements, um, the provider would probably lose his or her license and could face criminal charges. So there's an important distinction to be made here, and that is that we Canadians don't have a right. Um, MAiD itself is not a right. What is a right is the ability to be assessed for MAiD and have access to it if you are found eligible. Next slide, please. I always feel very apologetic when I put this slide up because it sounds very esoteric, but it's really important. Again, for in the context of dementia, it becomes hugely important. Um, Under the current legislation, you can be eligible for MAiD whether or not your death is reasonably foreseeable. We already discussed that. But the rules are different from track one than they are for track two. Track one is where your death is reasonably foreseeable, track two, where it isn't. Um, the vast majority of patients fall into track one. So why, you say, do we discuss track two at all? Well, track two, it turns out it's because of, well, it's because that's the way the system works, and it's important to know about it, particularly, as I said, in the context of dementia. Many of you may be asking, what on earth does reasonably foreseeable mean? Wasn't defined in the legislation. There are no firm criteria. It's up to the assessors to make that decision. These are the people who decide whether or not you're eligible for MAiD. Um, your death does not have to be imminent in order to be reasonably foreseeable. It has to be predictable. And this is a quote from a body in Canada that has grown up around MAiD protocols. It's been very important in establishing protocol. Um, and being predictable means that the trajectory towards death is predictable from the person's combination of known medical conditions and potential complications. Uh, so, just to summarize, your death does not have to be imminent in order to be reasonably foreseeable. It has to be predictable. So the rules for track one and track two are different in a number of different areas. But the most important difference relates to whether or not you have to be mentally competent on the day that MAiD is provided. Under the original legislation, everybody who got MAiD had to be mentally competent on the day that MAiD was provided. Um, and they had to approve and agree with the process, the procedure. So, but now, if you're track one, where death is reasonably foreseeable, you can sign what's called a waiver of final consent. How this works is that at the time of the second assessment, the patient chooses a date for provision and says, okay, even if I don't have mental capacity on that day, I want you to go ahead with the procedure. It can't be too far in the future. Most clinicians seem to be comfortable with 2 to 3 months, maybe 6 months at the outside. I don't have data on that. This is based on anecdotal evidence. So where this becomes really important is if you have a condition that will lead to mental decline, and there are so many of those. Let's say you or your loved one is diagnosed with dementia. You can be, as I said earlier, you can be eligible for MAiD even with dementia. In the early stages, you have the capacity to consent to MAiD. Um, I don't know how to go. Hmm. This is so complicated. So the reason dementia is eligible for MAiD where mental illness is not is that because they're two different things. And I certainly can't explain it. Dementia is a neurological illness, so is ALS, Parkinson's, Huntington's, and those are eligible for MAiD. So, assuming dementia means we will lose capacity to consent at some point. But as I said, if you're track one, you can sign a waiver of final consent. Um, if you have dementia and you're assessed as track two, the minute you lose mental competency, you're no longer eligible for MAiD. So this has led to a kind of 10 minutes to midnight approach where the practitioner and the patient let the data provision slide until just before they think there will be loss of mental capacity. Um, that's a tricky estimate. The other option is to have it well before you lose mental capacity, which is what several people have done. But of course, this is generally well before you actually want MAiD. Um, so, what does this all mean? And actually, I don't know. I can't even answer that question. But the fact is that 3/4 of people who apply for MAiD are assessed as track one. That was the case in 2023, which is the last year for which data are available. So, of course, that means a quarter are assessed as track two. Um, At the early stages, you definitely qualify for that. One of those requirements, you have an irremediable and grievous condition. In the early stages, you may not meet the second requirements. The two after that, the loss of capacity and intolerable suffering. So if it were me, my personal, I would be getting myself into the system as quickly as I could after a diagnosis. However, there is, as of yesterday, there is an article on MAiD and dementia specifically. It's long, but it is absolutely excellent. And if you're concerned about this, I have sent a PDF of the article to Sarah, and she can send it out to you.
Yes, and
And
I will also, sorry to interrupt, Kerrie, but I will put in the chat box at the end of this presentation my email. So anybody who would like my email to reach out to me to get the things that Kerrie has sent me, it will be in the chat box. And I just wanted to interrupt quickly and say that.
yeah, yeah, great. Next slide, please. How do you access MAiD in Alberta? Your first point of contact can be your doctor, and maybe that would make sense. I think that's probably how I would start. But a doctor's referral isn't necessary. In Alberta, the MAiD care team manages all aspects of MAiD. And you can get in touch with them by email at that email address or by phoning 811. The first step is to submit an application. I want to backtrack a bit. If you talk to your doctor about MAiD, you may find that he or she is not in agreement with it, which is fine. They're not required to be involved in the MAiD process. They are required to give you an effective referral,
Mm,
but that might amount to no more than saying phone 811. However, the good news is that once you do get hold of the MAiD care team, it's really the gold standard across the country. It's an excellent system. So the first step in requesting MAiD is to fill out a record of request, it's called. It has to be witnessed by one person, and it's available at the AHS.ca MAiD website. I think that is still accurate. I apologize. I should have checked that. But it will be, if you Google AHS MAiD Care Team, it will take you to the website and you will find on there the record of request. What is really important to understand is that MAiD is not regarded as an emergency service. It can take weeks.
mm.
So get the ball rolling
Yeah,
early
so
on.
if you all of a sudden are like, oh, yeah, yeah, you've got, I don't know, maybe a month to live. You don't want to wait. Like, if it's like you just got a diagnosis, then oh well, okay,
Yeah,
it needs to be done well in
yeah,
advance.
exactly. Especially if you have a condition that will lead to mental decline,
Yes. Okay.
of course. Um, It's also important to know you can change your mind at any time. As I said, I keep emphasizing this. Anytime you want to change your mind, you can do it. Next slide, please, Sarah. So, what the MAiD care team does is it locates two independent doctors or nurse practitioners to do the assessments of you. They do them separately, not together. They'll review your medical history. They'll ask about treatments you've tried. They'll discuss options other than MAiD. Um, if the two assessors disagree on whether or not you're eligible, you can ask for a third assessment. Some patients have asked up to five. Some have had up to five assessments, and some have gone to court with support from DWDC to have their individual cases considered. If the patient is assessed as not eligible, then you will be referred to non-MAiD services like mental health or specialty clinics or palliative care or, whatever. Next slide, please. If you want to set a date, if you're found eligible and you want to set a date for provision, you can, but you don't have to. Um, You can defer setting a date for as long as you have the mental capacity to request MAiD. The MAiD team will discuss the location for provision. Uh, it can be in the patient's home, can be in a hospice, hospital. Some people have had MAiD outside, which I think must be kind of nice. Um, in relatively speaking, of course. Um, You could be transferred home from hospice for provision. If the patient is in a facility that refuses to provide MAiD, that should have been identified in the first assessment. In that case, you will have to be relocated to have MAiD, and isn't always easy or timely. Um,
And the organization that you're in, if the organization is a place where they don't provide MAiD, you would have to, so if you were in a long-term care facility and the long-term care facility did not provide MAiD or go on the same page as MAiD, you would have to leave that long-term care facility before getting MAiD.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And this is not as big of an issue here in Calgary as it is in some places in the province. There are two facilities that that won't provide MAiD here in Calgary. Agape is run by the Salvation Army, and
Really?
yeah, and Dulcina is run by Covenant Health. Um, so those
Oh,
two, and I think there are moves afoot to certainly this has happened in some countries for facilities to clearly indicate whether or not they support medical assistance in dying, where it's legal, of course. Um, but yeah, it's an issue,
yeah.
which I will get to in a bit greater detail later. Um, So, on the day that the patient has MAiD, the provider brings all the supplies. Two medical people have to be there. And important to note, all costs are covered by provincial health care. And it doesn't affect your insurance. That's a question we get frequently. Um, the patient is told on that final day that they can change their mind. They're asked if they understand that getting this medication is going to cause their death. That's unless they've signed a waiver of final consent. Um, for patients with verbal difficulties in giving consent, there's other options available. Um, okay, next slide, please. So here in Canada, MAiD can be provided orally or by an IV. In the States, interesting to note, it can only be done orally. The vast majority of MAiD cases here uh, opt for the IV, almost 100%. And the reason for that is that the oral provision can be unreliable for people who are in an advanced state of disease.
Hmm.
Um, so using the IV method, they establish two IV sites, one to use as backup. There are four medications that are administered. The first needle in the IV causes a deep sleep. The second keeps the vein open. The third induces a deep coma. And the fourth causes the heart and lungs to stop. It is a peaceful death. Um, and it takes minutes. The doctor waits 5 minutes before declaring that the patient is heart dead. You can have friends, family, pets, maybe not pets in a hospice, but it's up to you to have the kind of people there, kind of ceremonies, whatever you want. It's up to you. Um, as a side note, it is possible to donate some organs after a MAiD death, but this will depend on your particular conditions. One thing to note is if you do want to donate an organ, you have to have MAiD in a hospital. Uh, Contrary to what a lot of people think, there's no upper age limit for MAiD. I heard of the other day of someone who was in his late 90s who donated an organ. It's patient specific and disease specific. Okay, next slide. I'm not going to go through everything that is ahead for MAiD. There's two issues that are top of the agenda right now for us, and the first one is advance requests, which is probably of interest to everybody out there today. An advance request would allow someone who has mental capacity at the time of writing the request to specify certain conditions under which they would like to seek MAiD, even if they don't have mental capacity. Advance requests are not legal in Canada anywhere except in Quebec. The Quebec began a program on October 30th of last year. We are quickly approaching the 1 year anniversary, and it's going to be very, very interesting to see what comes out of the assessments. We're going to learn a lot from the Quebec program. Um, it's not 100% clear, but there appears to have been one death in Quebec under the new AR program, but 74 people have registered their advance requests, and that's the way it has to be done in Quebec. So it's early days. Um, the hope is that, given that advance requests are legal in Quebec, that this will cascade over to other provinces. And this is it's going to be a topic of interest and development. I think a report from the government is due this fall. We'll see whether or not that happens. If you are in favor of advance requests, and we know that a ton of people are, um, you can go to that website that's shown at the bottom of the slide. And there is a letter, DWDC has provided a letter that you can sign and that will go to your MP. So, next slide,
And then
please.
the advance request is just so while I'm lucid, I say that I want this after I'm not lucid, and then it's my words. It's not, I'm not waiting to maybe, one day I'm not lucid and I can't make that decision.
Exactly. It has to be more specific than just saying I'm not lucid. You have to say, I don't recognize my children. That's the example
Yeah.
most people use. Or you can be more specific than that. You can say whatever you want. And my understanding is that the onus is on the medical community to decide in Quebec to decide whether or not those conditions have been met. But again, it's early days, so
Hmm.
we'll see.
Wow.
And I did, is this the time? Yes, I mentioned that report well, that's a slightly different topic. Anyway, okay. The next issue that we're working pretty hard on these days is called institutional religious obstructions, which is a mouthful. So we call them IROs. Um, an IRO occurs when an institution denies or impedes somebody's access to a legally available healthcare option on the basis of religious grounds.
Hmm.
In Alberta, there are several faith-based facilities that refuse to provide MAiD. They're mostly Catholic, mostly run by Covenant Health, and most of them are in rural areas or in the Edmonton area. In some rural areas, the only facility available is one run by Covenant Health. So that can be tricky. Um, in Calgary, as I said, there are two that do not provide MAiD. They are Agape and Dulcina. All of these facilities receive public funding. Um, I don't know how many of you remember a couple of years ago, 2023, there was a young woman in Vancouver. Her name was Sam O'Neill. She was in St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver, and St. Paul's didn't provide MAiD. I think, well, anyway, they didn't provide it at that time. So she had to be moved. She had to be medicated to an extreme extent in order to withstand the pain of the transfer. And she never regained consciousness, so she never got to say goodbye to her family. Her mother, Gail, in concert with DWDC and a couple of other people, has launched a charter challenge claiming that it's called a forced transfer, are unconstitutional under the charter. Um, in Alberta, in 2023, 74 people had to be transferred to another location. These are people who are very fragile. You get transferred in an ambulance. Don't know, Sarah, if you've been in an ambulance or how many people.
I
Well,
have.
then they have terrible shocks.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, it's like a truck. You bounce your way over to the emergency room.
Yeah.
Um, and there can be logistical issues. Ambulances are not always available. It's stressful for people to leave a facility that they may have come to regard as home. It's stressful for the staff who at that facility who may have developed a relationship with the patient. Another critical issue is that it's not always immediately possible to find another location to have a MAiD provision. And this has happened, even in Calgary, where most facilities do provide it. We feel the publicly funded facilities should offer all legal end-of-life options. If you agree, there is a website down at the bottom of the slide. Again, there's a letter there that can go to your MP. Okay, other issues? Yes, I mean, the biggest one is mental illness as a sole underlying medical condition. It is currently not eligible for MAiD if it is the patient's main underlying medical issue. Uh, Remember that neurological diseases are eligible, but mental illness is not. It was supposed to be made eligible in March of 24, I think, and again this year, but the government has now delayed it to March of 2027. So I won't go into this in detail, but if people are interested, please bring it up in the chat or question period. The other issue that if you read commentary critical of MAiD, you will almost inevitably find reference to the slippery slope. Um, I think this is what a lot of people said about giving women the vote. But studies have shown that there has not been a slippery slope. And again, if you're interested in discussing this further, I'd be happy to discuss it during the question period. So, next slide, please. Resources. Okay, in the early days, there weren't many resources, but there are a lot out there now, and some of them are excellent. A member of our committee, very helpfully prepared an extensive list of resources by topic area. I've sent that list to Sarah, and if you'd like to get it, please get in touch with her. You can also Google MAiD. Don't Google MAiD. Google medical assistance in dying. If you Google MAiD, you'll get cleaning services. Um, so what is shown on this slide are some of the main resources. I'm not going to go through them one by one. Again, if you want to discuss any of them, please ask during the question period. And I think that brings me to the end of my presentation.
Oh my heavens, that was amazing, Kerrie. Thank you so much. There was a few things that I had no clue about on there during that presentation that you brought light to the attention. I had no idea that and I always said it was Agape Hospice, but it's Agape.
I don't know.
Yeah, so I could see the letters in my head,
I
um
agree. I
but
have
yeah.
also, I've wondered about the pronunciation of agape and dulcina, but
Yeah, but I had no idea, and that's Agape. That's where my mom went when she was passing away. So,
mm,
I remember thinking, and I thought throughout this presentation, I wonder if back then my mom passed away in 2009, and I thought, I wonder if back then, if medical assistance in dying would have been available had she taken it. She had lung cancer, so I always wondered that, and I still to this day believe that she might have just to keep her out of that pain because she was in pain at the end there.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
but I personally, I do agree with medical assistance in death and dying. I think that it's somebody's right, and if they're of the right mind and they know that what's to come and they're eligible and they're given that right, that's their right. So
mhm,
that's
mhm.
but.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's their right to choose.
That's right. Yes. And I'm like that with everything. I'm very pro-choice, because what works for one doesn't always work for everybody, right? So I'm very individual that way. But
Well, Sue Rodriguez put it pretty famously when she said, "Whose life is this? Who owns my body?"
that's right. Yeah. I love that.
Mm.
And we do have some questions coming in, which is what I was going to say. I was going to talk a little bit to kind of give some people some time to type out some questions, but we've got them coming in. So
Hey,
we have someone who asks, who defines intolerable pain? That's a good question.
the patient, the patient, intolerable pain and suffering is according to the patient. So very subjective,
Yeah, and very individual again, right?
very
Because what's pain
individual,
to me might not be pain to you.
and it encompasses physical as well as psychological
Yeah.
pain. Yep.
Okay. And then another question was, what is the current approximate process time in Alberta from application to final event?
Oh boy, I think that's highly variable, partly because not all patients want to get MAiD as soon as possible. Um, so I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not sure how meaningful it would be anyway. I suspect the short answer is I don't know.
Okay. Well, thank you for your honesty, though. I appreciate Carrie. We do have another chat in the box that just says, excellent presentation. Thank you so
Oh,
much, Carrie.
thank you.
And then we have another one that asks, does this affect your life insurance?
No. No, it does not. Full stop. No question about that.
Okay.
When you die with MAiD, your cause of death, the distinction we make is that MAiD is the manner of death, it's not the cause of death. I don't know whether insurance companies care about that distinction, but it's absolutely clear that it does not affect your life insurance.
Good. Yes. Okay. And then another question was, can family members refuse the patient's choice of MAiD?
Technically, no. This is up to the patient, and it has been up to the patient to make all of his or her health decisions throughout their lives. And so, no, the family member, one hopes that there has been extensive conversation about this and that everybody can come around to supporting the patient's decision, but it is the patient's decision.
Yeah. Again, individual, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Um, we did have somebody else just type in and say, we don't let our pets suffer to death, so why would we do that for our loved ones?
Hmm. Well, yes. Yeah, a kind death. And it is, by all reports, a very peaceful death. There are some horror stories, inevitably, they get reported out there, but they're not accurate. There's so much misinformation about MAiD. I would urge you, if you have any question, there is our local email address. It's on the list of resources. It's Calgary at dyingwithdignity.ca. That is monitored by someone on our committee. And if you have specific questions, send it to us. Or head office is extremely helpful and supportive. And that address, I think, is I can't remember. I can never remember email addresses, but it's on the list of resources. It's on the list that Sarah can provide you if you're
Absolutely.
interested.
And
Yeah.
I did also type my email into the chat box so you can copy and paste it, take a picture of it, take a screenshot, make sure that you've saved it. Sarah with an H, C at unisonalberta.com. And I'm happy to touch base with anybody after this presentation to give you the resources that Kerrie has provided us and get you in touch with Kerrie if asked. So if somebody, Kerrie, asks, oh, I want to speak to Kerrie privately, am I permitted to give them your email?
Um, You know what I would prefer to just if they Calgary at dying with if they get good, sorry, if they I don't it my own the only email I have is my personal one,
Okay, no worries
and
then.
so I'm a little reluctant to that. I'm sorry, but
Yes.
you email to Calgary at dying with dignity, it will get to me.
Okay, okay, perfect. Email at Dying with Dignity. And I am unable as well after the presentation to email individuals. So that's why I always put my email in the chat box. So if you want to reach out to me, I will need you to email me first and I will definitely follow up. So I'm like that in my personal life too. I rarely have time to reach out, but I always answer. So um
And I do want to reiterate, if you would be interested in a workshop on advanced care planning, we provide those. I don't personally, but other people do in the organization. They're excellent, and it kind of forces you to, get it done.
I love that, Kerrie. So let's definitely email privately and talk about this opportunity. I do have one person who w is asking to speak. So it's Ria. So hi, Ria. If you just unmute yourself, you should be able to. We should all be able to hear you.
Sorry, no, I didn't want to speak.
Oh, well, you put your hand up and said speak. Okay, thanks, Ria. All right. Okay, so we do have some people also in the chat box saying yes to the advanced planning workshop. So we've already got some interest in it. Excellent seminar today and workshop and just the presentation all together today was just amazing, Kerrie. Thank you so much. And I think I want to leave this for there was something ringing in my head that I wanted to say before we left. And I think I heard somewhere once and it always stuck with me that more is lost by indecision than the wrong decision. And
Hmm.
I really like that. It always stuck with me, and I think
Yeah,
it applies to this as well. So just,
yeah,
make up that mind, right? And
yeah.
yeah. Oh, we've
It's
got another couple of questions. Sorry, Kerrie.
okay.
I want to ask if there is any talk or workshop for prepare personal directives.
Yes, and this is part of the ACP workshop that the committee does do. It's all part and parcel.
Oh,
It's kind
wonderful.
of leads you by the hand through the process, so it's a comforting way to you don't get thrown into the deep end. They'll take you through. I think the main person who's on the line, who does this actually is on this call. Uh, um, I don't know if you want him to speak particularly, but anyway, I highly recommend these sessions.
Excellent. And then, like I said, we can touch base privately outside of this, Kerrie, and
Yeah,
then we can hopefully get that set up and look at what that looks like in the future.
yeah. And it is the case that not planning, as you said, Sarah, not planning does not reduce the likelihood that you will die. Um, so
That's right. That's
it's a
right.
good thing to do.
Absolutely. I'm a big planner with everything. So, um, someone else just also typed in the chat box that Alberta Health Services also offers workshops on personal directives.
It does.
So,
Yep.
yes, thank you
Lots of
so much.
organizations do. And there's a lot of resources online. If you're the independent type, you can do this on your own.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, well, I mean, I just want to take another opportunity, Kerrie, to thank you so much for being here. I want to thank everybody for being here as well. Yeah, we're getting some great feedback in the comments. So, thank you everybody for being here today. Come on back next week. We're online almost weekly with different presentations, different health topics, different education. So join me back here next week. And if you want to share this recording or you want people to see it, we're going to put it on our YouTube page, Unison for Generations 50 Plus. Go ahead and just subscribe to that page or like that page, and then you'll get the kind of the prompts that say what we're talking about and what the presentations are going to be. But thank you again, Kerrie, so much. We're getting lots of hearts for you. So, and I'm going to start doing this at the end. I don't know if people have been here for the last ones, but I've been doing this at the end every time. So, big thank you, big hearts, big love from Unison. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. And Kerrie, I'll be in touch with you again very soon, I'm sure.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Bye all.
Thank you, everybody.